heart. My poor, fragile shipper heart. Olicity, how could you? But we'll get to that. Right now, these are Inglorious reviews, and I'm looking at Arrow 312 Uprising. Oh man, what a great episode. You know, me of 2 years ago who hated season 1 would just be so shocked at how much enjoyment I get out of like watching every episode of this show. Stephen Amell on his Twitter account, he called it part 12 of our 23-part movie. And I have to agree, it really is like watching a small part of a big movie every week. Oh my gosh, lots to talk about. Okay, one thing that kind of annoyed me as we went into the episode was what it would be in real life if this happened. And I understand that when you're watching a TV show, part of your house just has to suspend your disbelief because, sometimes the logic outweighs the need of the plot. But, oh my gosh, okay, any mayor who actually told the police to evacuate a district and let a mobster rule a city, they wouldn't be impeached. Or at least that would be the end of their political career. They would always, for the rest of their career, be the mayor who allowed the police to abandon the glades. Like, they would be impeached. Like, the president might, have them removed from office. I actually don't know if that's politically legal or whatever, but that's the sort of thing those are the sort of consequences we're talking about for such a thing. Like, oh my gosh, the police chief would be removed. I mean, remember when Ferguson blew up and, like, within a few days, the police had been removed from, being in charge of it, and the National Guard had come in, and, there was this, this whole thing where, and there was looting. Like, there was, oh my gosh, it was just craziness on the streets every night, and that was with the police presence. Well, the police were contributing it to a lot of that craziness, but I digress. And so I'm just thinking, like, oh my gosh, people would be losing their jobs. There would be this there's already a huge theme in this show, especially when the Glades are concerned about the divide in the city between the rich and the poor. Like, so all of these, rich, powerful congressmen are being protected. Like, there's no talk of, okay, let's get all of these congressmen or council members out of the city or under police protection while we deal with this. Let's get all the major players that he might target out and let the police and bring in the National Guard and deal with this guy. There's none of that. There's just, okay, we're gonna fold because these people's lives matter more than, like, the thousands or whatever members of the Glade district. And like that would have just really blown up the city's problems with the poor, thing about the divide between the rich and the poor. There would be marches and protests. People would be resigning from office. It'd be this whole thing. But none of that happens. So that just really annoyed me. And I was thinking also, as time went on, like, okay, but like, what about the people in the Glades? So the police are gone. Why aren't the street gangs trying to fight this guy? Why aren't street gangs, like, getting together and, going up against this guy? Because, I think there, different people would not, the different groups and gangs and would not be happy about this guy trying to come in and, get all, and he doesn't, like, Brick himself, like, his whole power is, he's very hard to defeat because, and that annoying too, how is this guy so strong? How is Brick, like, bulletproof? They never explain this. And how, like, okay, so Wildcat, the guy who could not get, who, owns a MMA gym, who's been, still fights years and years, who's clocked actual time as a vigilante, who trained the Canary, is not in Brick's league. He gets his butt kicked, which seemed really ridiculous to me. He gets his butt kicked, but somehow this guy Brick, this mid-level, mobster guy who's just, a whole lot of muscle and, lots of guns, and that's really it, he is somehow in the same league as a member of the League of Assassins, who's been a member of the League of Assassins for 10 years. Like, how does that make sense? How are they measured up together? I mean, Malcolm doesn't ultimately defeat Brick, but he puts up a pretty good fight for a while. And it was really weird that this guy should be in such a league when it seems like, his whole thing is just that he's hard to kill and he has, a bunch of thugs. But eventually, those thugs would be outnumbered by even the people in the Glades. And, by the National Guard and the police. Like, eventually, you'd run out of people and you run out of manpower. So, I don't know. That just doesn't really make sense to me. But still, that whole scene, and as I was going into this, as I mentioned, there was this whole thing where I was wondering, well, why aren't the people in the Glades getting together? Like, really, it was so easy for Roy to get get that gun in season 1 that, Thea got so upset about, and, for him and his friends to go out and try to rob that store. So, like, no one in the Glades who owns, a couple, who owns their, personal guns, like, would get together and be like, screw this, we're gonna do some vigilanting ourselves. I'm sick of people screwing around with the Glades because we're poor. And, I'm surprised it wasn't that element. But then in the end, when you saw the Arrow team gathering all the, street people in the Glades to fight off Brooke's men, that was just great. Oh my gosh, it was such a great sequence. I think it might have been an homage to Batman 3. The scene between the police and Bane's people with, like, all the town people coming from one side and all Brick's people coming from this side, and they'll just all go out and start fighting each other. Oh, it was such a great scene. Oh my gosh. So, now to really say the episode, it really is, like, very, movie-esque little part of the episode, which is, I think Stephen Amell is really right on the money when he says, welcome, here's the newest part of our 23-part movie. Yeah. Oh, and we saw Sin, by the way, Sarah's old girlfriend, Sin. Yeah. So that was really cool to see. And okay, this just drove me nuts. She did not get a good look at Sarah. I mean, I guess maybe from body types or whatever. Or, like, you could easily probably tell that, the girl, that she was in a wig if you got close enough. But Sarah, but, like, Sin, like, saw from a distance during this huge fight that it wasn't Sarah, but Detective Captain Sheriff Lance could not see that, even though he was much closer to her and he could see her face. He could not recognize Sarah. Oh my gosh, that was funny. It seemed a little silly. Sin had to tell him that. Okay. They've been really dragging that plot line out this year. I don't really understand why or what it's building to. But that seemed a little silly. Yeah, good episode. Okay, all the Thea stuff. And, I've said before that Malcolm has really, really been kept, obviously, they really love John Barrowman at the show. I mean, John Barrowman's great. I love him from Doctor Who and all that, and, he's a great actor. He really bumped up the quality in season 1, I would say, and other people would say that too. But there's been so much mental gymnastics to keep him out. Like, they won't hand him over to the police for some reason. They won't hand him over to the League for some reason. Even though he said he said in this episode, he's killed 503 people. He'll admit it. So, like, fine, you don't want him to hand him over to the League because, his death would really affect you. Fine. Hand him over to the police. Let him go through due process. Let him go to prison. Because, Thea would still have him around. Barry has to visit his father in prison, like, all the time if he wants to. And his father didn't even do anything. So let Thea have to, could still have him in his life, could still communicate with him and go visit him. But, he wouldn't be out there killing people and would actually be facing consequences for the things he did. Just so many mental gymnastics to keep him out. Like, it really makes no sense to keep him out. Like, in the beginning, everyone was like, well, Malcolm really cares about Thea, and he loves her. And that's, and so since Thea really needs someone in her life, we're going to let him live. The thing is, it has been proven now, Malcolm doesn't care about Thea. Not really. Thea said tonight, he made me a top priority the night of the siege when no one else did. He snuck into the city to rescue you so he could, manipulate you into running off with him, so he could drug you and have you kill someone, so he could use you to have Oliver protect him from League of Assassins. Like, that's his whole thing. He doesn't care about Thea. He wanted to use her. Like, it was his whole thing with Thea. Even when he talks about, wanting to start over, his feelings aren't really about Thea. He's using her as an emotional substitute for Tommy so he can get some kind of do-over. It's not about what's best for Thea. It's about what's best for him emotionally. Everything is about what's best for Malcolm. And he, uses Tommy and he uses Thea or whoever else as like a shield for his own selfish actions. And now everyone knows that. Like, Roy listens to Thea talking about how he was, saved her the night of the siege. But he knows that Malcolm drugged and had Thea murder Sarah. He knows that happened. So for him to go on about how, like, oh, well, you know, he cares about, he protects things he cares about. No, he uses things he cares about for his own ends. Oh my gosh, it was such BS. Really ridiculous how everyone just talks around. Thea was the only voice of reason. I mean, Laurel doesn't like Malcolm, but she, you know, just didn't, you know, thought, you know, using him for the fight as a you know, a practical. She wanted him to work with him for practical reasons, which I could kind of understand. But Felicity is the only voice of reason. Like, no, he sent Oliver to his death. He drugged Thea. He's the reason Sarah's dead. We're not working with him because he's a murderer who is not trustworthy. And she's like the only voice of reason. It's like, yes, that is exactly it. And I know, practically, they need to have reasons to keep John Barrowman involved in the plot because he's great and everyone loves him and Malcolm's a really compelling character and all that. But, oh my gosh, like, everyone's just, like, pretending. And there's this thing, like, really, it's a comic book thing, and it's a thing in TV shows, like, you know, the cartoon TV, you know, superhero TV shows like Teen Titans and Justice League. Sometimes, and I don't know, even Gossip Girl, where, you know, to keep characters around, you have to to keep the plot, you know, interested, you know, you have to do characters do worse and worse things. But to keep those characters around, you then later have to downplay how bad those things were in order to justify keeping them around and have them not face consequences. But, oh my gosh, downplaying how he killed 503 people. 503 people, not to mention all the massive destructions that caused in the Glade and the unrest that caused, you know, for months and months and a year afterwards. It's just mind-boggling, really, sometimes, you know, the way they're choosing to go about this whole plot. But I realized, you know, watching Thea, she's not stupid, you know, she understands what happened, but she's just in deep, deep denial. Like, you know, she should look at Roy and think, like I said last time, Malcolm would have had Roy killed in the undertaking because he was from the Glades, because he was poor, because he was a juvenile delinquent. He would not have cared if Roy died. Like, you know, this boy I love died. And, you know, he should look around. Like, she lives in the Glades. The Verdant is in the Glades. Malcolm, like, he didn't care about helping. His version of helping the Glades would have kept would have meant everyone in the nightclub, and the nightclub itself was destroyed, and everyone in there died like 2 years ago in that siege. And she has some serious, like, her emotional problems. I mean, when you think about it, must really run deep if she's so desperate for a connection to someone who she thinks will be honest with her and tell her the truth, that she's willing to overlook everything he's done. Like, her emotional problems really must run deep if she is in such denial over, you know, whether it is right or not to be with Malcolm, whether, you know, she's crossing any moral lines by helping Malcolm stay hidden or in having contact with him and all this. Oh my gosh, like, it's really very sad when you think about it, how desperate she must be for, you know, a connection with a family member who will tell her the truth, because she came to not trust Oliver. I think there's parts of her, like, she loves Oliver. I don't think there's parts of her that trust him. I think there's part of her that knows maybe that he keeps a lot from her, and her mother didn't tell her the truth. Her mother was involved in the undertaking that almost got Roy killed, and she was like, she didn't tell him about, you know, Merlin being her father. She kept things about his relationship with who she, you know, her adoptive, you know, who she thought was her dad. And so I think, you know, she relies on Malcolm. You know, he's really, you know, he's rough with her and teaches her all this stuff and tells her about, like, the League of Assassins. So I think he's like, you know, well, he's not necessarily a good person, but he cares about me and he's honest with me. So, you know, and and that alone must, you know, is enough for her to overlook everything, because I think she has some serious, like, emotional and, you know, trust issues that I think the show doesn't always bring to the surface, doesn't always show on the surface. But oh my gosh, it really struck me tonight how really tragic Thea's must be. Wow. So that was the other big thing of the episode. The League of Assassins are coming, I guess. I guess, yeah, Maseo, you know, came back and, you know, those other 3 guards were dead, you know, with a cut on, and he made that cut on his neck. So the League knows that Oliver is alive. I'm really, really curious about what happened in Hong Kong now, because I mean, you know, I speculated last week that their son might have died, but what could have driven them to such extremes to, like, for Tatsu to say, I too have disappeared from the world, that to the point where she, you know, she doesn't want anyone, she not want anyone to know she's alive, or she just doesn't care about humanity. I mean, the death of a child is devastating, but yeesh, I'm really, maybe she's, you know, trying to hide from Amanda Waller. You know, maybe things went south with her. Who knows? But I'm really interested now to see, you know, what happened and how that whole plotline's going to play out at the end of the season. Yeah, so, oh my gosh. Oliver was standing on that van. Another thing that really struck me about that, he was standing on the van, addressing the city, addressing the press with all these people around him. First thought was, okay, couldn't a camera maybe get a good picture of him and try to figure out who he was? I don't know. But, you know, but it was a real shock because, you know, see Oliver dressing in pledge. That's very Flash-esque. That's very comic booky. For him to, you know, who normally, you know, some people don't totally think he's, well, I guess they all think he exists at this point. But, you know, for him who normally acts in the shadows to be addressing people, to be standing on a van with, like, you know, cameras and, you know, someone was holding a mic up near him, you know, addressing everyone. It's very, extremely how comic booky that was. And I guess maybe that was the show's way of showing us, like, how far he's come from being the villain in everyone's eyes in season 1 to being a hero and embraced by the city. Like, you know, in season 1, it was a threat for him to say, I will never leave the city again. Now it's a promise that he will protect the city and say, I will never fail you by leaving the city again. It was, you know, it really shows how far Oliver's come in the eyes of people of the city, in his own eyes, I think, that he was willing to, like, do something that public, to address everyone so publicly and say, you know, to pump up the troops really and say, good job everyone for fighting for the city, I'm back. So that was a really cool / surprising moment, right there. But, yeah. Very exciting to have Oliver back, finally. I wonder if, now that he's back and this whole Glaze plotline is over, if Roy will go back to the background again. But maybe they learn from their mistakes and they're going to try to include him a bit more. But we'll see. He's done more in these last few episodes than he did the entire first half of the season, as I've joked around about. Yeah. And just kind of hanging out with Thea. Does Roy have a life outside of, I mean, I guess none of them really have lives, but, like, Roy, he's young. Like, he works at the club. Like, you know, we kind of saw him making friends with Sin, and, when he talked to Sin tonight, they haven't seen each other in a long time. Does he have any friends outside this? Like, did he have any street friends that he talked to before, you know, he meeting up with Thea and joining Arrow? I don't know. Does he have a life at all outside of that club? And it's underground. I don't know. I guess none of them do, but, well. Anyways, okay. Now let's talk about Olicity. Well, I was predicting that maybe, like, when she came up to hug him, I, like, was predicting that maybe they do a cliched, like, and I guess it was silly to think this, but maybe a cliched where she, like, kisses him or whatever, and they have this whole, like, really emotional reunion, and you know, she cries and, like, goes up to hug him, but, you know, instead of there having this happy reunion, she gets mad at him for deciding to get together with Malcolm, and I can't blame her. You know, the whole mess that they got in, with Oliver almost dying, with Thea, with Sarah, is because of Malcolm. Malcolm is not trustworthy. He's selfish. He will use everyone to his own ends. And, like, I guess maybe Oliver, I mean, Oliver's been pretty dark too. He didn't try to, you know, genocide a bunch of poor people, but, you know, he's killed people, so I think maybe Oliver thinks, well, if I can save him, you know, keep him from becoming a killer, then being there for Thea, then maybe, you know, it says something about me, about, you know, the dark, that I could come back from darkness. If I can come back from darkness, and he could come back from darkness, and that says something about, you know, the two of them, you know, both characters. which may be fueling Oliver's desire. And of course, he wants to go up against Ra's al Ghul, Ra's Australian. So maybe that's why he would like to go. He wants to start some, get together with Malcolm and work to, prove something about Malcolm, prove something about himself, by helping Malcolm become better than a killer. And for Thea's sake too, of course. But I honestly, I can't blame Felicity for being angry at him for doing that. That, for her to say, okay, really what I've been saying, why does everyone keep overlooking the fact that he drugged Thea and had to murder Sarah? Like, that's the sort of thing, like, turn him over to the League, turn him over to the police, do something other than team up with him and give him, like, access and make yourself vulnerable to him. And I honestly could not blame her for saying when she's like, Malcolm orchestrated the murder Sarah, a woman you used to love, by having Thea, a woman you love, murder her, and you're going to ignore all of that and work together with him instead of staying the heck away like you should. I couldn't, and of course you can tell Felicity is just like a bundle of exposed nerves. Like, she's walking a fine line between like a total, like, she's understands that she needs to go on. Like, she figured that out like, 2 episodes ago, but she understands that she has to go on. But I think it's really obvious, like, throughout the whole episode. Of course, Emily Bett Rickards just knocks it out of the park every freaking time. But you could just tell, like, she's walking a fine line between just having a total breakdown. She's just, really working hard not to just lose it the entire episode. So for him to come back, the first thing to be like, the guy who just sent me to my death, I'm going to work with him so I can, get into another fight with a guy who tried to kill me. And, after almost a month of letting everyone think he was dead. And which I can understand her frustration, her, just being like, I have had enough. I can't take this anymore. We are done. I cannot, and I cannot understand her deciding that she just cannot handle the emotional cost of being emotionally involved with Oliver Queen. And so I think this might finally be the point where she decides to try with Ray Palmer, which I don't like that guy, but we'll see how that goes. I think, I wouldn't mind seeing Oliver not suffer, but suffer a little, watching her go off with someone who will not jerk her around a little bit and will actually have is willing to actually have a real relationship with her. Yeah. So it broke my heart though, and I do ship Felicity and Oliver together. And I'm not like one of those hardcore rabid shippers, but I do like their relationship, and that was really sad. That was really tough for me to watch. I mean, understandable, you can understand everyone's point of views and everyone's emotions, but oh my gosh. Why? So sad. Oh my gosh. I always thought this would be the season where they like work their way to really dating each other. But it looks like we might have to wait a whole other season for them to have to work through all these emotional issues and, to see if they wind up getting together. It might be in season 4. Oh my gosh. I mean, this is was obviously always going to be one of those slow burn type romances, but oh my gosh. This was hard. These last few episodes have just been hard. But, hopefully things will get a little better now that Oliver's back in town. But oh my gosh, the look on Oliver's face when she was like, I don't want to be one. Like, she doesn't even not want to be with Oliver. She's like, she says, I don't want to be one of the women you love. That was rough. That was just really rough. And Stephen Amell was like, and Oliver thought a sword through the stomach hurt. On his Twitter account. Check out his social media stuff. He's fun to check out on social media. So yeah, I think that's about it for the episode. Another good episode. Like, I had my little qualms, but overall, I enjoyed it. There are some things like, I just watch and I don't really and you watch and you think about it later, but like, and you don't really think about, enjoying, and you like it after the fact. But this show, I just really enjoyed watching the entire time. I really did. I had my little quabbles and my little, thoughts about everything, but I really enjoyed watching the whole episode, from the, the fight scenes to the, character stuff to, all the, all the different flashbacks. I didn't go much into the flashbacks. I don't know. I don't need flashbacks about him joining the league or whatever. The little Nisa was very cute / funny, which she'd probably stab me if she ever heard me call her that. But it seemed a little unnecessary. I'm not interested in the redemption of. I don't want to drag this video out too long, but I am not interested in the redemption of Malcolm Merlyn. Like, you tried to kill a bunch of like an entire district of poor people just because they lived in the neighborhood where your wife was murdered. Like, people die everywhere all the time. You don't kill everyone in the vicinity just because you hate poor people. 503 people died. We saw all the destruction it was caused in season 2, and that's enough for me. It really is. I'm not interested in the redemption of Malcolm Merlyn. I'm really not. Yeah. So I don't know about that. And knowing everything you did to Thea and Sarah, like I'm just not interested in watching him be redeemed. I'm not. But otherwise, a really good episode. And enjoyable. And yeah. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything you want me to talk about, anything you're interested in me, any other topics about this you're interested in, any other shows or whatever, talk to me in the comments or, on my Tumblr, which I'll post this on my Tumblr too. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I will see you next week. Good night.